We'll get moving. So thank you for joining us for this rental readiness program. This is considered one of our financial capability programs that we offer at Champlain Housing Trust. I'm going to break down some of the contents in a few slides on what it is that the overview of the programming will be. I just want to talk a little bit about the virtual learning space. We typically encourage folks to live on the land of mute just so that way we don't get background noise and feedback that comes through. But please feel free to unmute yourself in the event that you have a question or need that arises or if something comes up. Comments, questions, concerns are all valid and I would like to hear them, and we encourage participation. In the event that you have some kind of technical issue, feel free to just log out and log back in. The same event link will work, and Barb and I are both monitoring the chat spaces and participation areas to make sure that we'll be able to let you back in. We want to acknowledge that all of us are very unique individual folks that address our finances differently, and we want to be respectful of the perspectives that other people are bringing into this space. So I just want to put that out there. So Champlain Housing Trust does a good bit, and that's who it is that I'm here representing and working for. Our mission is to provide and support perpetually affordable housing in our communities. We have apartments for rent, affordable homes to buy, loans to help people fix their homes, as well as education programs. So for rental readiness today, we're going to talk about some additional tenant education spaces and options, rental options internal and external to Champlain Housing Trust, and as well as some general money management pieces. I'll explain that a little bit more in a bit as to why it is that we're talking about money management and it's relevant to rental readiness. So fair housing is a practice in law that applies to everybody: landlords, realtors, property managers, those involved in housing. Also you, we're all required to follow specific fair housing laws to prevent discrimination. There are federal protections on race, color, sex, disability, national origin, religion, and familial status. And then also over here in Vermont, we have additional protections that you can see on the right-hand side of the screen. We have our partner organization, CVOEO, who has a fair housing project that they manage. In the event that you feel that you've been discriminated against, please absolutely reach out to that program and they would be able to help you navigate some of the processes and pieces that come with combating discrimination legally and in the housing system. There are a variety of housing options at Champlain Housing Trust. We have, as I said before, apartments and home ownership. We also have some co-op units, and we have some housing for homelessness programs that we are putting on through a lot of hotels, for example, right now. So everybody deserves safe and affordable housing, and that's why it is that we're here. And we're going to try and provide you with some education to help break down some of those barriers. We have a couple of additional education programs outside of this rental readiness program that are set up to try and enable people to access rental units when they otherwise might not be able to. When you are applying to live somewhere, traditionally your credit gets screened and they'll ask for landlord references. This is true at most property management companies and then also at Champlain Housing Trust. In the event that you have a negative credit history that prevents you from being approved from moving in on a traditional kind of, I'll say like a more open market kind of rental option, then we have a class called Ready, Set, Rent that folks can take, which I actually have some slides that are in here later that I've snagged from that presentation that goes into more like financial capabilities education. There's also our Rent Right and Tenant Skills Partner Program. CVOEO puts this on, and this overcomes if people don't have a landlord reference. If you take that class, tenant skills in the Rent Right program can help overcome if you don't have an existing landlord reference. And then that would enable you to be able to rent from CHT once you've met these requirements, if otherwise you weren't able to just upon applying. There are some additional resources. I'm going to do like a medium-sized dive today, but if you want to get more into the weeds and details, there's some guides and classes available online on these subject matters. CVOEO and the Vermont Tenants folks have been putting out very comprehensive guides online in PDF versions. I've got some links here in the notes to this PowerPoint, and so I'm going to send this on over after the class, so you'll have access to where it is that these live online. CVOEO also has a class on finding housing on demand. I'm hoping to give you the things it is that you came here looking for today. But if I don't, definitely feel free to follow up with us via email, or perhaps one of these online resources can answer your questions. Our email address is going to be on the last slide at the bottom of this, or most of you should have gotten something from me already in order to actually access the link to attend this class if you're here in person. So when it comes to finding rental housing, you'll want to cast your net wide to help ensure that you can find housing. You want to assess what is it that your housing needs are when you're trying to rent somewhere. Importantly, I think it's really helpful if you keep track of where it is that you've applied when you're looking for rental housing. It's very competitive right now. And so if you're looking at multiple apartments, you're not necessarily going to remember, oh, this is the one that had that sink that was really bothering me, or that was the one with the ugly shag carpets. So taking some notes and keeping track of where it is that you applied can be really helpful in helping you make a decision about where it is that you want to ultimately move in. When I was applying, I had like a little spreadsheet, but you could do it on paper with a tab that was the landlord's contact information, the property management company in another column, and then another column that was like, here's the rent amount. So however it is that you decide to organize it based on your own needs and priorities. At CHT, we have 3 different types of apartments. So again, you don't have to rent from us, but if you're going to, these are the types of ones that we have. We have some subsidized apartments, which are considered project-based units with income limits. These have a cap where only 30% of your income for rent and utilities can be charged here. Notably, you can't use a Section 8 tenant voucher here, and the rent amount changes if your income changes. We have tax credit apartments as well. These also have income limits. The rent here is reduced and lower than the market rate. The rent amount remains the same for a full year, like it would if you were assigned to or bound to a traditional lease. You can use Section 8 vouchers in these types of apartments. And then we also have market rate apartments. I say like these are the regular ones from property management companies and private landlords. These don't have income limits. There's no rent reduction. You pay the full rent amount. You can use a Section 8 voucher at these. And then also it's like most of the time you're just signing a lease and obligated to that same rent amount for the entirety of that lease obligation. I'm going to talk a little bit about the rental application process here at Champlain Housing Trust. I feel like that little 3 strikes stop sign is aggressive now that I finally put it in front of people's faces. So I might change this to a different visual down the line. But I'll explain that in a second. I just want to apologize because I'm realizing now it looks a little abrasive. It's like, stop. No, don't stop. Thank you for being here. Take your notes. Enjoy your learning. But when you're applying to CHT, we break it down into kind of like 4 steps. The first one is you fill out your preliminary application. And then we wait until you're at the top of 1 or more wait lists. Once you're further down the line and you're kind of closer to being able to be like approved or moved in and we do more screening, that's when we invite you to do a full application. And that's the point where we pull your credit and we check your landlord references. You would be flagged to take the Ready, Set, Rent class or tenant skills class if it was necessary. We do this because we used to have people do like the full application at the beginning and then they'd find somewhere else to live and we pulled their credit for no reason and called their landlords for no reason. So that's why it is that it's kind of broken up this way. After you've been processed with doing your full application, then you're waiting for a unit to actually become available, and you'll want to wait for a unit available notice to come from our property management team. This would be an indicator of the fact that a unit is getting fixed up and being prepared to be move-in ready for you. I also want to put on people's radar the 3 strikes rule. When folks come in for a Ready, Set, Rent apartment counseling appointment, I double check all of the properties it is that they've said they're willing to live at. In the application, it lists like, here's our Burlington ones and what those options are, the Winooski ones and Colchester. And so you check off each individual space that you're interested in living in. We have an internal policy where if we offer you 3 different units and you say no to 3 of them, it starts you over on the wait list piece. So it's like important to cast your housing net wide, but also you want to make sure that you're doing it in a way that still is meeting your needs. So that way you're not saying no to things and you're just saying yes to what is actually available to you. Is this bringing up any questions? Nicole?
I always have questions. Sorry. As far as the market rate, because a lot of the folks we work with are looking at market rate, are there longer wait lists for the other 2 than market rate? Can you give me a sense of that? Because I've had people apply for market rate and just not hear back for quite some time.
I've got to be honest, the application folks are the ones that handle all of the wait lists. They have that very much under like a lock and key kind of over here, because otherwise it's like everybody's going to be calling and asking, where am I on this wait list? So
Yeah.
I have a very, I have a limited access to that kind of knowledge, I feel like. I think that I'm going to ask Barb if you have any insight on that, just given the fact that you've been here for a little bit more time. from just my experience since September, it's hard telling. I think that the market rate apartments could see a little bit higher of turnover, but I'm still not sure, or like frequency of turnover rather. But I'm not entirely sure. I'm gonna ask if there's anything else coming from my boss.
Yeah, so I asked a little while ago and I had heard, because every apartment is different, right? When we have apartments out in Grand Isle that are lovely and delightful, but not everyone wants to live in Grand Isle, and you must have transportation if you do. So some apartments might be harder than others, than in like downtown Burlington, where there's transportation, etc. My understanding is the average wait for most people on a wait list is 14 to 15 months.
Oh, that's all now? I heard 4 years, so it's gone down that low.
So again, it's going to vary. We do find the subsidized apartments turn over far less. So those ones where you pay 30%,
Yeah.
when people get in, they often stay in. So those
Right.
don't turn nearly as much. So yeah, it could be over a year. What the property management team is trying to do is when people get to the top of the list, I want to say somewhere within the top 10 or 20, they're actually reaching back out to those potential tenants and saying, hey, you're hitting the top of the list. We're going to go ahead and do the full application screening, if you're still interested. Because if people are waiting more than a year, checking your credit this year means we're going to check it again next year.
Right.
We've
Yeah.
done it twice. And so, we are really trying to be mindful of our own staffing, but certainly mindful of our tenants, potential tenants as well. So it is a really hard thing to say exactly. One of the other pieces that we tell people though is, make sure you keep all your information up to date, because declining an apartment is a strike. But if they try to reach out, so if you've given them an email and they send an email saying, hey, 123 apartment is available for you, and you don't respond, that counts as a strike as well. And so you want to make sure that people are paying attention and responding, so that they don't end up having to start all over again. So
with that said, Barb, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
With that said, I've got someone I'm working with who had moved and put a change of address in, but the letter didn't get to them until like 4 months after it was sent. So they didn't get the letter. So are they notified by regular letter and email? Because they said they never got an email. They just got the letter and it was already past the time they had to respond.
So, and that tends to be one of the issues we find people face. There is a place within the system where they mark whether the person prefers mail or email. And
Okay.
so one of the things they can do is they can follow up, call the applications line,
Yeah.
and just say, it's Joe Schmo. I put an application. I want to make sure you have my correct contact. Email's my preference. Here's my actual email. That'll help.
Oh, that's so helpful. Thank you.
Yes, that's what we're here for.
Did that answer your question sufficiently?
Thank you.
Okay, great.
I have a question about the 3 strikes. If somebody gets 3 strikes, are they removed from the wait list, or they just go to the bottom of the wait list?
I've been it starts you over.
Okay, so they have to start with a new preliminary application.
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to be clear. Thanks.
And that's why, it's lovely. One of the things nice thing is Ready, Set, Rent gives you a chance to meet with the one-on-one, appointment, because I get it from somebody's standpoint. If you're desperate looking for an apartment and you think, I'll check all of them, that'll help me. I'm better off if I just check everything. And actually that can work against you, because like I said, if you've chosen, Enosburg Falls or Isle Lane housing and you don't have a car, you're going to have to decline that. And so, really thoughtfully selecting the apartments that you can actually take helps you. But that's not intuitive, right? So that's why we're glad you folks are learning some of this, because then you can pass on, these tips to help people out.
I'm going to move into some brief parts on the tenant finance requirements. And then this is kind of where it is that it was a little bit more dense and slow. After some of these other slides, I'm going to start going through things a little bit more quickly, but Thank you for asking your questions, and please feel free to continue doing so. Just so y'all know, our internal financing requirements are that applicants have to be 18 or older with 6 months of positive credit history or no credit history. So it's not a barrier for example, somebody that is like a new American coming to the space and not having credit. That's not something that bars them from renting with CHT. We want to have demonstration of satisfactory past performance in meeting financial obligations. Sometimes this can be provided as like a rent payment and payment of utility bill history. Negative credit history is a factor for denial if past due amounts are more than $1,500 per person. We exclude medical bills and student loans. And then internally, we also have the policy that an applicant's projected rent and utility payments must be under 50% of their gross income in order to be considered affordable. This information is available online under the renting tab. We have a tenant selection policy document. If you go under renting, find an apartment, apply to rent, there's also additional breakdowns and some more details about the kind of like step-by-step process. It breaks it out in like this kind of interactive little map way. And I would encourage you to snoop around over there. But also we're available if you have some lingering questions. I want to make sure that folks are aware of the Section 8 program. And this is an assistance program that can help eligible folks pay less in their rent. There's 2 kinds of vouchers. There's a tenant choice voucher, which is in your name that you can take with you. And then there's a project-based voucher that is attached to an apartment. So this is kind of like a subsidy that's coming from a housing authority in order to minimize your monthly rental costs. Again, tenant choice means that you can take it with you. Project-based means it's attached to a particular unit. These vouchers are offered by housing authorities, and notably CHT is not a housing authority. That would be Burlington Housing Authority, Winooski Housing Authority, or the Vermont State Housing Authority that you would apply for this program through. The wait lists are a little long, but definitely can be really worth it and save you a lot of time, headache, and money in the long run once you get through the process. We also have some other housing options that we like to put on people's radar, which is housingdata.org has some affordable options that they list online. A program that works well for some folks is Home Share Vermont. A common example of this is like my friend Jackson was living with this really nice older Italian couple over in Charlotte that were sick of doing yard work. They were tired of mowing the lawn. So they were like, Jackson, come live with us and you can have this room for like $400 a month if you do some yard work and chores. So they shared their home in exchange for some services in order to have a like smaller reduced rent amount. We also refer folks to the United Ways of Vermont 211 line that I'm sure y'all are acquainted with in this circle, but also feel free to give that line a call for a multitude of economic services. There are some more, there are lots of resources that are available through 211. If you're experiencing homelessness is also something we recommend as an option, as 211 is a space where you can get some information and resources. There are some other housing options like co-ops. CHT has co-ops, but these exist out in the regular community as well. In these, you live in your own apartment within the co-op, but you'll have like usually some kind of like shared space or shared resources. Sometimes it's like you have a shared conference room, common area, or you have a shed out back that you all use. In these situations, everybody kind of makes decisions about communal and shared spaces together. There are bylaws that everybody operates by. The collective kind of creates and implements a maintenance plan for building in shared areas. And you guys set the budget together. This varies a lot from location to location, but at our CHT co-ops, the monthly costs tend to be similar or less than comparable tax credit apartments. I'm gonna move into some like money management pieces today because your credit is typically screened when you apply for an apartment. Your financial stability impacts your housing stability and rental stability. You're also regularly paying expenses like rents and utilities, and these are really important parts of money management. So I'm going to move into that. So money management is how it is that you pay for all the things that you need and want with the money and credit it is that you have available. We have a budget, which is what it is that you know, or kind of the plan. There's your attitudes, which is how you feel and what you think about earning, spending, and saving. And then there's our actual behaviors, which is what it is that you choose to do. Sometimes there's a little bit of discrepancy between these things. Sometimes you make a nice plan, but you don't always feel the right way about it or the same way about it, and so you don't act that way. It can be helpful when you're reflecting on your finances to try and get these things to align. And it's just something that we'd like to bring into the space. Knowing yourself and how money works for you is also helpful and important in developing your own money management strategies. As we've discussed already, everybody's a unique individual with a lot of colorful pieces that background their approach to finances. Some like personality tests can help you figure out how it is that you spend money. One that we like to talk about a lot is the money habitudes. This is available online, and it provides a comfortable, fun space for you to reflect on what it is that some of your own habits are when it comes to approaching finances. When it comes to, we're going to talk a little bit about goal setting, because, you know, people coming through this, I'm under the impression you have a goal of successfully renting. But knowing why it is that you want that and why it matters is helpful for getting you some more like long-term results. You can make the process of goal setting fun. My friends and I have been putting together little summer bucket lists like we used to do when we were kids. And so if you want to make like a rental or housing kind of bucket list, needs and want list, it could benefit you in terms of evaluating what it is that your needs, wants, and priorities are. I like to, I feel like this kind of SMART goals thing has been thrown at everybody a lot these last few years, and I think it's been overused almost, but at the same time, it's really helpful and practical for establishing goals for yourself. When you're formulating a goal, you want it to have a plan, because a goal without a plan is just a dream. So ideally, the goals that you're developing are specific, measurable, so that way you can track your progress, attainable, so we're being honest with ourselves to make sure that we have attainable, reasonable goals. Relevant, you want to make sure this is relevant to you now, not something that you thought was cool when you were 16 or will maybe need 40 years from now that's not relevant. So relevant to you and timely now. And then also goals should be time bound and attainable in a defined period. So that way you have like a deadline kind of holding you accountable. It's important, particularly when we're making long-term financial decisions relating to our housing security, that we make intentional decisions. So since we're on the subject of like goal setting and money management and kind of assessing where it is that we're at, I just want to put into the space that if we're making decisions on this matter from a place of just emotions, you might feel great in the moment, but it could lead to regret down the line. There's also the idea that you could just be in this logic column, you know, and then you're making decisions that make sense, but you're not necessarily going to follow through in the long run. If you're coming from a space that's more intentional, it's going to respect your emotions and logic. It's going to make sense and feel good. It's going to make you more likely to follow through, and you're also less likely to have regrets. I snagged this from our Ready, Set, Rent presentation because I just think it's lovely. Connecting our saving needs and goals to our lived experiences greatly improves the chances of success that you'll have at meeting those goals. This is just like a little vision board that was thrown together. Ollie wants to save up for a security deposit so that way he can move out of his mom's house and have some more privacy and space for him and his cat, Mr. Whiskers. Something as simple as visual reminders in your space can help you hold yourself a little bit more accountable. You can also you know, take some more strategic policies or options like Ollie did here in these example, like adding apps to your phone and having some buddies. But connecting your goals and motivations is really important here. I got a chat notification, so I just want to go into that space really quick. Connie had said that on the subject of SMART goals, that accountability is also something that she's seen for the A letter before, as opposed to attainable. Like asking the question, who have I told about this SMART goal? Or who knows I'm setting this SMART goal? Having witnesses and other people that are supporting you in order to help hold you accountable is definitely helpful, and I like that. Thanks for putting that on our radar, Connie.
I sometimes think we should, so it's funny because you can, like the attainable, it's funny, I think we should add it to the SMART acronym, because attainable is just as important, right? It should be like SMART, like extra A or SMART A. Like you could do whatever you'd like, but I think that's important. And I think as our team is out there thinking about goal setting with people, I find that happens like whenever you're like, I'm sure this happens at CHT too, right? Like when you're working with people who are going through housing counseling or thinking about their credit goals or their money goals as it relates to their housing, the minute they tell a resource coordinator, I want to do this thing, I'm going to do this thing by this date, and this is how I'm going to do it, the next time you see them, you can be that accountability.
So we're gonna update this. We're gonna change it to wicked smart.
That's what I was saying, that Boston inflection, wicked smart, right? If we just do that way, we got it.
Yeah, and you could even add an H in there somewhere. Yeah, and the H could mean housing. So it could be like, this is a housing goal related to, I'm joking, not joking.
We're gonna copyright this conversation and take all of that to the bank.
I'm sure we'll get lots of grant funding for it. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and move into saving now that we've talked a little bit about goal setting. Saving must become priority, not just a thought. Pay yourself first. Statistically, you're more likely to save if you pay yourself first instead of waiting till the end of the month. My brother's an exception to this. You know, everybody has different plans that work for them, and do what works for you. But also at the same time, don't be afraid to try other strategies if your current one isn't getting you the results that you want. So there's a few different types of savings. We have 3 general types. There's emergency savings. This is your budget buffer. This is for things that pop up like a car repair, because you know if it's not one thing, it's your car, or you're taking your pet to the vet. Unanticipated expenses that just make it so that way you don't have to charge things to your credit cards when they come up, or you ask for like a loan, or ask, you know, family and stuff. There's also targeted savings. These are for a specific goal. So a security deposit, buying a car, an important trip, etc. And then there's investments, and this is saving for the future. So, you know, saving for retirement, to buy a home, for starting a small business, or going back to school. There are a few different methodologies for saving. You could do this regularly. It's usually part of your budget if you're doing this regularly. We broke down the demonstration of how even if you just save a couple of bucks a week, that puts you at over $100 a year in savings. It doesn't have to be anything crazy. Starting somewhere is definitely good just to build the habit up. Also, a regular or once in a while savings is an option. This isn't usually in the budget. I see this a lot when people get their tax returns. So a rule that we have kind of endorsed, or one that I like particularly, is that when you see something irregular come through, like you get some birthday money, or, you know, my grandparents were able to help me with something lately, a couple $100, which was nice, and I broke it up. I was like, I'm going to do some to the past, some to the present. And then we have, so you could do like a third to the past, which is you put a third of your, let's say your tax return in this case, down to paying off some existing debt you have, paying down a car loan or something, for example. You could do a third to the present because it's important that you have fun in your life and that you enjoy your life and you do things to like maintain your mental and well-being. And then there's a third that could go to like the future. So you could break this down so that way you're also saving for future needs. A multitude of strategies are available for irregular savings. When it comes to saving for a security deposit, since we're on the subject of rental readiness, you just want to make sure that you have a very specific plan. How many weeks is it until you need or want to move? We have an example of here, if you have 8 weeks and you need $950, that means you'll need to save $119 a week. I'm going to break down on the next slide. So if you are developing a specific plan for a targeted savings goal, as opposed to just being like, I'm going to save money for this thing, it can be helpful to break it down a little bit and figure out just how it is that you're going to do that. So we have this example of somebody saying, okay, I'm going to save $800 in the next 3 months by planning out my meals. This will save me $100 on food. I'm going to ask for some help with the cable bill. This is going to save me $75 each month. When I go out shopping, I'm only going to take the bus once a week instead of 3 times and plan my shopping a little better. So that's going to save me $30. So we're developing a very specific, measurable, attainable, accountable, relevant, timely goal here. Notably about security deposits, you're going to need to pay your first month's rent and security before you get your existing one back, if that's applicable to where it is that you live right now. So it's not like you're going to be able to use your existing rental unit's security deposit to move in, because you don't get that until you move out. So for almost all CHT apartments, your security deposit is equal to the full month's rent, even if you have a Section 8 voucher. So you'll definitely want to make a plan for this. Many of us are going to need to save that money to have it available, hypothetically here. Will you need to save it from regular income, such as your paycheck? Or do you anticipate a regular income, like overtime or a tax return? There are some special programs that provide help for security deposit if you're a household experiencing homelessness. CVOEO's Housing Assistance Program is one example of such, and then the Committee on Temporary Shelter. You might need to seek help from family members, friends, or others that could help if you have the folks in your circle that can't. Also, local churches or nonprofits have intermittent funding that can become available. It's just hard to kind of peg that down because the funding isn't consistent. It's a bit more seasonal almost, you could say. I have an example on the significance of savings here. We have a person that I've brought up a couple of times now. I think his little motivation board slide is this same guy, Ollie. And I like to use this example of Ollie did a great job of building a habit of building savings, but he calls you super frustrated and he's like, I saved so hard for so long to get money for my apartment and have a little bit left over in the bank. And now my computer goes out and it's going to cost me $300. I give up on trying to save. After all that work, my savings is down to just $27 and it doesn't seem worth it anymore. I want to open this up to the group for a little bit of participation in chat. And I just want to ask what would you say to Ollie? Do you feel like saving that $300 was a failure? Or what are some of your thoughts and opinions? What would you say if he called you with this? Well, I'll tell you what I'd say. It was not a failure. You have that money so you can use it when you need it. Keep going. You did it once, you can do it again. If you didn't have the savings, you would have put it on a credit card and then you would have been paying interest on it for forever. Or you would have had to go ask somebody that's mad at you for asking about borrowing money from them for more money. So saved yourself a lot of time, headache, and money in this case, even though it's definitely frustrating to have your savings go back down. But I think that it's important to kind of reframe things. Our heads do that a lot. So we talked about savings. I'm going to move a little bit into budgeting. So budgeting doesn't have to be super fancy. It just has to get done. Big budgeting secret here. We're not dealing with what's right or wrong, but with what works for you at any given time. There are a lot of different ways to budget. Good old fashioned pen and paper, a jar and envelope where you physically take out your money and put it into jars or envelopes. There's online programs, computer and mobile apps, spreadsheets. Got some blank calendars that I send out to people all the time for a template, so you could do a calendar method. Banks and credit unions have a lot of online resources, or definitely feel free to reach out to your existing bank and credit union and see if they have some resources that maybe work better for you than what it is I'm sharing out today. So there's a few different steps for setting up a budget. I just want to move into the chat really quick because I saw something come in. Thanks, Connie. Motivational interviewing. So there's 4 simple steps we've broken down for setting up a budget. Step number 1 is knowing your total income. A lot of folks that come through aren't entirely sure about how much it is that they make. And how are you going to decide where it is that all of your money goes if you don't know how much money it is that you even have? Or at least you can make those decisions, but how accurate and informed is that going to be? How solid of a plan is it going to be if it's based on information that's not necessarily accurate? Step 2 is going to be tracking all your debts and expenses. We recommend folks do this for at least a month, and that will give you a more accurate gauge of what it is that your spending looks like. If you want to go out for longer, feel free, but just kind of grouping things together and really knowing where it is all of your money is going is going to help you. Step 3 is comparing your debts and your expenses to your income. So once you know where all of your money is going, you want to add that all up and you want to compare it to how much it is that you're making. And you kind of evaluate and adjust from there. I've got a true or false question for you, and you can definitely use the chat space or just give me a thumbs up or thumbs down on camera. True or false? Once you create your budget, you're done. Do we
Super false. Super false.
Super false? Getting big no's, getting big thumbs down. I got a double thumbs down over there. Yeah, absolutely not the case. Life changes, things shift around. Not just financially for people, but just with your day-to-day living. What mattered to you last week might not necessarily matter to you this week if something happened. So it's okay for things to change over time. it can be hard at the beginning sometimes with budgeting, but eventually it does become a second nature, particularly once you've got the system set up to where you've really tailored it for your own needs. Every once in a while, challenging circumstances may require a different kind of budget where you're required to go on crunch time, create a short-term plan in order to get through it. You may need to seek things like a temporary spending freeze, dramatically cut your expenses, or seek non-traditional or creative income. And it usually takes a little bit more than just willpower. So I have another section on dealing with debt very briefly, but I'm wondering if there's other questions that are coming up. Not really? Okay.
While I would love to talk about budgets forever, because I love talking about budgets, I'm happy to move on.
Okay. Oh, I gotta turn that back on. Thanks, y'all. So we're gonna move into dealing with debt. Again, we're not dealing with what's right or wrong, but works better for you at any given time. We need life to be more than just about paying bills, but we also have to manage our debts and expenses, and we should set aside money for a buffer or reserves. A lot of folks that come through for our rental counseling will ask about collections. So just in case this is relevant, I wanted to put it on people's radar. People ask a lot of the time, you know, should I pay this collection? The first thing you want to ask is this mine? If the answer is no, you're gonna probably need to do some research and dispute it. If the answer is yes, you'll need to ask the following questions. Can you pay the collection without getting behind in your budget? Do you have enough saved for security deposit and first month's rent? So prioritizing where it is that your money is going to be going is important when you're addressing debt obligations, because otherwise you're just possibly going to end up in more debt if you're not building out savings in order to prevent it from happening in the future. But also, like, this is greatly affected by like your income that's coming in as well, notably. When it comes to paying collections, we recommend paying it in full and getting everything in writing. If you negotiate a settlement, just make sure you get everything in writing. And collections do fall off of a report after 7.5 years from the date of activity, last date of activity. Even once they fall off, you still owe that money, and you may have to pay taxes on the amount that's been charged off. It's just not on your report anymore. A strategy for addressing debt that I like to put on people's radar is this snowball effect. I'm going to go ahead and put these on the screen. So we have Ollie that we've been talking about. He's got 3 credit cards. He's got a MasterCard that has a $35 a month payment that he has to make. In the middle, you can see he has a Discover card. That one has a monthly minimum requirement of $115 that he has to make on it. And then the last one is his Discover card. And that one he has to pay $121 minimum each month. So a way that you can save yourself a great deal of time and interest is by addressing the smaller debt obligation first and then rolling that into the other larger summed amounts. So in the example that we have here, Ollie first decided that he was going to pay off his $35 MasterCard, and then he was able to add that over to his Discover, where he has to normally pay $115. He's able to add that $35 to it. And so now he's paying $150 towards that one. And then after this is done, he can lump all that money into the larger one. So again, this saves $2,811 a lot of time, and then a year and 8 months of time. So it's just a good strategy and option. Notably, you have rights when it comes to credit and credit reporting. You can go to annualcreditreport.com for a free pull, an informational soft pull of your credit report. You can also go to myfico.com or directly to the bureaus if you want to get your score. We recommend that folks create an annual date to go to this website, annualcreditreport.com, and check their credit. Just to verify the information on there is accurate for like fraud prevention purposes, and monitoring and maintaining the status of your credit is just a good financial health practice. We have some other educational opportunities that delve a lot more into credit specifically, like the breakdown of scores. But I don't have enough time to kind of go over all of that today, or else I would. But we're going to address a few things about building credit without debt on a couple slides here. Notably, you're able to opt out of promotional soft pulls on your credit. This is where you get those things in the mail that are like, you're qualified or pre-qualified for this credit card or for this Ashley Furniture Home Store. We bought your information from TransUnion and found out that you look like you might want to buy a couch. So you can opt out of promotional soft pulls by going to optoutprescreen.com or calling this 1-855 opt-out number. This is, again, on the subject of like fraud and identity protection and maintaining your like financial health. It can minimize your exposure to scams and reduce the temptation that you have on to take on more credit. While we're on the subject of credit, I just want to talk about something that comes up a lot, which is a lot of the times when people pay off a credit card, they'll close it. And sometimes this, as opposed to helping your score, can hurt your score. In this case, we have Ollie here, and he closed his Best Buy credit card once he realized that he was done paying it off. But it negatively had an effect on his score because this card was his oldest credit card. It was opened in 2015, and creditors like to see aged accounts. And then also, since he closed it, it reduced what his credit limit is overall. So between the three of these cards, it was $13,500. But now just between these two cards, it's $10,500. He still has the same outstanding balance that's existing in total, like he owes $6,200 total. So now it looks like he's using more of what's available to him because his limit is lower. Is that making sense? Up, down, maybe medium? Okay. This is a little breakdown in the quarter about some credit basics. And if you have additional questions about that, feel free to reach out to us at education@getahome.org. And I'm going to put the email address up on the last slide too. My computer's kind of just acting really slow right now. Sorry about that. I think we can go through there. And then I just really quickly want to go over some options for building credit without building debt. There's a really common misconception that in order to have a good credit score, you have to have a lot of debt, and that's just not true. So with careful consideration and understanding of your money management skills and a plan built on knowledge, you can have good credit without some debt. There are savings secured loans. These are options where you visit a bank or credit union with a savings secured loan product and you take out an installment loan. You borrow $1,200 from the bank, and the bank deposits that $1,200 into a savings fund that acts as collateral. At this point, you've agreed to a regular payment schedule. In our example here, you've agreed to $100 for 12 months to get you this $1,200 amount that's sitting in a savings account acting as collateral. So every month you pay this $100 to the credit union or bank until you get to a zero balance. The lender is reporting this to the bureaus monthly. At the end of the payment schedule is when it is that you receive that money. So it's not accessible while you're making the payments. It's only liquid at the end. So you're effectively saving while improving your credit score at the same time because you're taking out an installment product. There's also the option of sharing an account with somebody. You want to discuss this with a totally trusted person. Barb put on this slide in all caps with 3 exclamation points, a totally trusted person, because when the good goes with the good, it's great, but when the bad goes with the bad, it's not fantastic. The difference between an authorized user and a joint account is something I just want to go over really quick. An authorized user, a common example of this is somebody putting their older child onto their credit cards. A parent is authorizing their child, in this case, to be a user on their account. They're not necessarily giving a card to their kiddo, though. It's just giving them access to the history. This is different from a joint account, which is often associated with like married couples, where both of you have the same kind of like agency and permissions over the account, and you both have the access. You're also able to get a store credit card. These usually have modest limits. You want to kind of be cautious, if you shop at the Gap a lot, maybe don't get a Gap card because then you'll be in there a lot trying to get points. But also if that's not your forte and you just want a cheaper pair of jeans every once in a while, maybe it does work out for you. We recommend gas stations because what are you going to do? Go in there and ball out on Skittles? Like, Shouldn't be anything too crazy. So this is, you would choose a business where you already shop, apply for a store card. Again, this usually has a modest limit. This will likely have a third-party finance company. Home Depot sells saws, they're not a bank. So they make the bank deal with the financing. And you would use the card for items you regularly purchase and just pay the balance off each month. You're not letting any balance outstand or accrue. You're paying it off each month in order to not build up debt. There's also secured credit cards. And this works where you deposit money into an account, and then that money acts as the limit on that card and collateral. Otherwise, it acts like a regular credit card. So the lender will give you a credit card with a limit equal to your deposit. And again, you would just want to use the card for the items that you regularly purchase and pay the balance off each month. Reminder, everybody's different. Create a plan that suits you. Since we talked a little bit about joint users and authorized users, I want to touch on relationships in managing money. One way to increase success with money management is to involve everybody in the household when making a plan. When everybody's on board, it can greatly improve individual motivation. Like Connie was saying before, some like accountability pieces. It also connects people to the end goal and increases your chances for success. You just want to make sure that you're developing a plan suited to your household because everybody's individual background colors how they view money differently. Earning, spending, saving, it carries emotional ties. Also importantly, you want to differentiate between who it is that can be the coaches and who it is that can be the cheerleaders in your life. I have some people that I absolutely love that will egg me on and cheer me on and are fantastic to have in my circle, but I would not take financial advice from them ever. So it's important to just establish who is it that you feel like has handled money and credit well and who could share their wisdom and experience with you. And then there's cheerleaders that can offer support and encouragement and help you stay motivated. So just knowing who these people are in your circle can kind of help you stay committed to these ideas. We want to encourage folks to take charge and make the time to be active participants in their own financial life. Too many people only think about or discuss credit and money when it's a problem. If you establish a regular time to focus on money manners and lay down some ground rules and expectations to help ensure it goes well, it can really help contribute to your success overall. We encourage like a Money Monday or a Finance Friday or Wealth Wednesday, maybe once a month, just sit down, do your budgeting, assess what your financial goals are, and try to zoom out a little bit. Accept that some things won't work, but that's a natural part of the learning process, and it's good to try new things. So this is the final question time. And then here's our email address for any follow-up. I'm wondering if there's anything coming up on these subjects or pertaining to your role as resource coordinators and over at United's Ways, if there's anything that kind of came up about renting or any questions lingering.
So let me ask this follow-up then. Was this the information you were looking for? Did this zoom in enough? Was it too zoomed in? I know we talked about CHT because that's where we are, but we were also trying to include, a lot of other information as well. So did this kind of target in and zone in on what you were looking for?
I think I'm going to speak for the group here, but you guys, you can chime in too. I think this was great for employees, and I think this was what we were exactly what we were looking for. And I think that now I'm trying to think about ways we're going to be able to get this in front of employees more, and help encourage people to touch this content. But I also I was not surprised, but it's really helpful to think about housing goals as it relates to money goals, and so bringing in the money goal part of it was really, really helpful for our roles as financial coaches. I think in my head, this session I was like, oh, rental housing and searching and the tools for that, but you can't really talk about that most of the time with the folks we're working with. I think that they're going to want to talk about the money of it, right? It's intertwined. So